Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming here so we can honor together the memory of my mother and your friend and former teacher and whatever other relationship you had with her, with Roxanne. We'd like to start it's quite informal. We don't have a very strict structure about first this, then that. But we would like to start first with a song that me and my brother and I will sing. Shape up, Dana. She's turning in her, okay, anyway. Yes, Paul. Roxanne has always been a great fan of Simon and Garfunkel, and especially the songs that came out in the 60s. So we're going to start with one of her favorite songs. She expressly asked us to sing this. She made us do it. No.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping, and the vision that was planted in my brain still remains within the sound of silence. In restless dreams I walked alone, narrow streets of cobblestone, neath the halo of a street lamp. I turned my collar to the cold and damp, when my eyes were stabbed by the flash of a neon light that split the night and touched the sound of silence. And in the naked light I saw 10,000 people, maybe more, people talking without speaking, people hearing without listening, people writing songs that voices never shared. No one dared disturb the sound of silence. Fool, said I, you do not know, silence like a cancer grows. Hear my words that I might teach you, take my arms that I might reach you, but my words like silent raindrops fell and echoed in the wells of silence. And the people bowed and prayed to the neon god they made, and the sign flashed out its warning in the words that it was forming. And the sign said the words of the prophets are written on the subway walls and tenement halls, and whispered in the sounds of silence.
So we're going to use the time we have here now to just share reminiscences, memories, things that you'd like to share with your experiences with Roxanne. And first person will be my older brother, William Hofford.
Thanks all so much for coming today, everyone. Really appreciate it. And I know Roxanne does too. She's had so many beneficial effects on so many lives over the decades. She really is an example of the ripple effect, because people that she's inspired have inspired others who've inspired others, and it just goes on and on. And it's impossible to calculate how much positive effects she's had on the world, especially through her years as a teacher for gifted and talented. She also liked the symbol of the butterflies, and which is an ancient symbol which meant basically the immortality of the human soul, because the caterpillar seems to die, but then it kind of is resurrected as a butterfly. And so the cultures of ancient Europe and the Near East would put that symbol on all sorts of things, which later, as things got a bit rougher, turned into a double-bladed axe instead of butterfly wings, but started out as a butterfly. And there's that butterfly effect as well, which is basically that ripple effect. Whether it's small events, small actions by people, an individual, can have such great effects, completely unknown to the originator of that action, the original action, but can really be world-changing. And that's why this painting by a well-known English artist whose name I forget, that has a title that is the longest title of any painting I've ever heard, and so there's no way I can remember it. But I call it the Butterfly Fairy, and if you, maybe later you can look closer, and you see in her hair and around her are these butterflies. And so I thought that was very appropriate, and she's holding a bag of gold dust, and representing Roxanne's generosity. She was a very generous person. When people needed help, she was really there. She cared deeply about not only the welfare of her family, but also various social issues. And she was a contributor to environmental, political, educational, definitely educational and economic causes of all kinds. And they call every day. And one of the memories that's really stuck with me since I've been a little kid has been her motivating me to not give up, no matter how defeated I seem to feel, whatever I'm having difficulty with. I was trying to read something, and I hated reading, if you can believe it, because she was such a teacher. But I hated to read. It didn't make sense to me. I didn't care. And she just kept at me and said, "Don't give up so easily. You can do it. You just keep at it. Don't give up so easy." And that one time, that just really somehow, you know how with kids, one event will just kind of stick into the brain, and that's what stuck with me. My very earliest memory was walking hand in hand with Roxanne on what later became JFK Airport, which was then called Idlewild or Idlewood Airport in New York, towards the large burnished aluminum turboprop airplane that was going to take us to Germany to meet my dad, where he had been just stationed as a special services, not special forces, special services, which in his case meant he put on shows for the troops, the occupation troops in West Germany. And I was in awe. And I remember it was a cold day, and she was wearing a brown fur coat. And I was just, to me, I was so short, the white lines on the tarmac just seemed to stretch off to infinity, and we were gradually getting closer to this behemoth of a vehicle that I had never seen up close before. And I was just speechless. And that's my very earliest memory, in fact. And it was such a clear experience. I even remember a dream I had on that flight. And so we got to Germany and had a lot of fun there. There was a lot of social activities, a lot of plays. I was kind of scared of some of the characters when they were dressed as characters. And my mom, Roxanne, was often one of those characters, and she looked so radically different. She was kind of like, "Are you really my mother?" And you can see some of the photos in the panels out there, usually black and whites. She was also a very private person, and if she didn't want to talk about a subject, that was that. And no amount of attempts to convince her otherwise would ever bring it up. And so there are a lot of things about her that are still kind of mysterious to me. And it was kind of a don't ask, don't tell on certain areas. So I'll always be curious. Another thing that she really inspired in me was an appreciation of nature. She used to take us boys to walks in the woods. We called it Walk in the Woods. There was an area nearby where we lived in Massachusetts that had a lot of forest still in it, and there were some streams and some wildlife. And one day we found a beehive, a wild beehive. And we were just amazed at everything because we were basically kind of city kids. And we just loved it. And we always wanted to go walk in the woods. Can we go walk in the woods? We want to go to walk in the woods. And once in a while we'd go. But it had really instilled a sense of the specialness of nature in me, for sure. Roxanne was also very tough and resilient to the very, very end. Even when undergoing chemotherapy, radiation therapy, she still made it a regular practice to do her exercises whenever she could, regular walking, part of the daily routine, and eating right and doing the right things, and keeping it all together. And even telling people when she was on her bed, can't get up anymore, put that thermostat to this, and you do that, you do that. And so she was in charge just about to the very, very end. And so what we'll do is between kind of like you can think of it as a reminiscence intermission. We'll have another song from my brothers Dana and Paul, one of her favorite songs, another Simon & Garfunkel song, Scarborough Fair. And then we'll do part 2 of Reminiscences. And then we'll close here with a revised version of an old Welsh lullaby, which I hope everyone has the lyrics to now. And originally, it's on the back, All Through the Night. And we kind of tweaked the lyrics a little bit, my brother Dana and I, and changed it to All Through the Light. You can sing whichever version you like because the melody remains the same. But it's a beautiful one. She sang it to us, at least to me. My brother Paul and Dana don't have as clear a memory, but I definitely do. And I love that lullaby. And I always wanted it sung to me. And just before she went into a permanent coma, she had been in a coma briefly. We thought she was asleep, and she woke up, or came out of the coma, a few minutes before my brother Dana and I went in to sing her this lullaby that we had revised a bit. And she was almost like a child, in a sense, like childlike wonder. And so we sang it to her, and she really liked it. She really appreciated it. But she couldn't speak by that point. But she was definitely smiling a lot. And then a few minutes later, she slipped back into coma and stayed there until she passed away. And so I thought that was kind of a mini miracle kind of a thing. So I'll stop here, and please, whoever feels the urge to stand up, come to the microphone and give your memories and experiences that are special to you. And if two people get up at the same time, whoever is fastest or most polite will get here first or afterwards. So.
Back in the early 70s.
Oh, wait a minute. You can use these mics here are wireless. You can just take them off and walk around.
Oh, gosh. Thank you. Okay, back in the early... Can you hear me now? Okay. Back in the early 70s, we had friends who went to Europe, and they left their children behind. They left 2 of them with us for 2 weeks and 1 with Roxanne and Les. When the friends came back, they asked the child keepers to come and have dinner with them, and that's when we first met Roxanne and Les. The other friends drifted on, but Roxanne and Les became lasting friends. We often met over dinner at one or the other's house. It was an era of national tumult. Nixon, politics, cultural changes, marches, etc. And of parental tumult as well that comes with raising boys in such times. I could go into that, but I won't. We always had plenty to talk about. Roxanne blossomed, and I was really awed by her intelligence and talents. She loved teaching, and she loved to talk about school and what she was doing in the classroom. We heard about the Shakespearean plays that her kids put on, about trips to Williamsburg, and we watched her growing interest in teaching gifted and talented children and in promoting education for teachers of those children. She already had her master's degree when she moved there, but she went on and got her doctorate. She was active in Mensa and organized and directed a scholarship program for teachers of the gifted and talented. But Roxanne was more than just an interesting person. She was a true friend. We knew each other's children. We knew each other's families. We knew the histories that came with each of us and the experiences we had had. When my marriage floundered, Roxanne was an essential anchor, providing support and often sherry as I maneuvered through tumultuous seas. When the waters calmed and I introduced her to the new man in my life, the one who is still with me 40 years later, she gave her blessing. She loved teaching, and she knew she'd know when the time was right to retire. It coincided with Les's illness. She was so absolutely devoted to taking care of him and did so with deep love, compassion, and lots of books that she began to read incessantly. When Les died, another chapter in Roxanne's life began. She returned to the classroom, but not as a teacher, as a student in the Osher Lifetime Learning Institute in Fairfax. It was the perfect match for Roxanne, firing her intellect, her curiosity, and her love of learning. One of the classes she especially loved was Reader's Theater, and it was in this class, and some of you may have been in classes with her there. They would read plays and each week, and at one point, some of these senior actresses and actors were invited to join a group of George Mason students for a play reading. I remember going to that. I had never seen her on stage before. And when I looked on stage, it wasn't Roxanne. It was the reporter who looked like Roxanne, but didn't look like her at all and didn't talk much like her either. But she was really good, and it was so great to see this other side of Roxanne. As we aged, the dinners we used to share in earlier times evolved to lunches. 2 hours would pass in no time. We talked about our family, classes, books, great places we'd traveled, what was going on in the country and the world. We would laugh, and we would sometimes cry. And once we shook, rattled, and rolled. We were at Artie's in August 2011, having one of our lunches. And there was this loud noise. And then it was like a freight train coming through. The building shook, the water in the glasses sloshed, and momentarily we pondered what to do. And then it dawned on us. This was an earthquake. And we joined the lunch crowd heading for outdoors. Without question, it was our most memorable lunch. Roxanne taught me her greatest lesson in the last 2 years of her life as she dealt with illness. She wanted to get better until she knew that she couldn't. She had written a marvelous story of her life several years earlier, and she realized that it was time to close the book. And she took it in stride. One day she called me and said she had good news and bad news. The bad news she said, was that the cancer would take her soon. The good news, she said, and I could see the smile on her face through the telephone wires, I won't have to hear about Trump anymore. I feel so fortunate that we had that marvelous friendship for so many years. I miss you, Roxanne.
Hello, my name is Paul. I'm the youngest son, and a lot of her life has already been in the program that's in your hands, and Jody gave a good synopsis of everything, but I want to say that she really inspired me with her art. I don't know if y'all know, but she was a really good painter, and she was a great painter, in my opinion. I love her stuff, I really do, and I have a few of her pieces in our house. And she inspired me at an early age. I remember once we were like coloring, and I was like coloring, and then I look over what she's done, and she's taken this like kids coloring book page from like some Venetian gondolas, and it looks like something from the Met or something. It's like it was like a masterpiece. I was like, wow, I was dumbfounded. And from that moment on, I was just like, I was really kind of interested in art, and I still am to this day. And classical music also she introduced me to, and I never really would have known anything about it except if it wasn't for her. And I actually recorded a few pieces for us to listen to while we eat later. And there's a lot of really beautiful music out there in the world, I mean, people like what they like and they don't like what they don't like, but she introduced me to a lot of rich stuff in classical music. We also both like to read books. Like later on in life, we're both just reading books and talking about the books we read and stuff. And the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo series and things like that. And it was great. And William also mentioned the walk in the woods that she took us on. And I had this strange experience there where it's just like I sensed like there was something else there besides just us. It seemed like there was invisible fairies down in the creek bank. I could feel them in my childish brain. But the strange thing is, you might think I'm crazy, but certain places I still feel the same things in like little creek beds and stuff. And so I always think of her at those moments. That's basically about it. I'm glad that you all came today. I'm really glad that y'all are here. And who's next? I'll just put this here and so y'all can make up your mind.
of all of her students that were here, we were all fighting a guy who got to speak, so I won. I hope we didn't cause too much of a ruckus. My name is Rob Spiewak, and due to a lucky break, Mrs. Cramer was my teacher in 1980 or 81, maybe the 80-81 school year. I had started out in the appropriately named teacher, Mrs. Weary's class, and it was crowded, and I think 6 of us got moved from 4th grade to get to sit in with the 5th grade class. And it was a tremendous lucky break. I've been very reflective, thinking about Mrs. C for a while. And a couple things that the Cramer crazies who are here, and I think we represented pretty well. I mean, it's been 35 years, and it's 7 of us over here. That's pretty good. Her classroom was unlike anything else I had seen to that point. Up to 4th grade, I recall a lot of standing in line and staying in place and speaking when spoken to and fitting in. And then you get to Mrs. Cramer's class. And keep in mind, we're 10 and 11 years old, and she says, well, today we're going to read Shakespeare. I said, I don't even know what that is. And she made it so relevant and valid, and the fact and I remember her saying, if you read it aloud, you'll understand it. And so we did plays. It was the first time I'd ever done a play. She had everybody ruined everybody's house's bed sheets because we did Julius Caesar. So there was 1 million destroyed bed sheets. No bed sheets in any of Fairfax County. And another thing that she did is she did introduce, I think, all of us possibly to classical music. You had mentioned that. She had such a love for that. And I still love music, and I love all sorts of music, but she really opened the doors when she said, just listen to this. And to have a classroom that instead of being silent, when you'd come in, there'd be music playing. That's great. And I don't know if the people that are talking about knowing her and also she was the first time I ever saw, I like to use the phrase, a teacher out of context. Teachers should be at school, right? And if you see a teacher at a grocery store or somewhere, it's like, well, you can't be here, you're a teacher. But I was talking to my cousin who is a teacher and reflecting about Mrs. C and a lot of the stuff she did. And I said, do you know that Mrs. Cramer showed me my first computer? And she said, how do you mean? Because Casey's like 26 and computers have always been there. Well, Mrs. Cramer got everyone in the class and brought them to her house. And I think in the entire class, 3 families had computers. And so there was 3 home computers that we all got to see and touch and look at. And we had no idea that this was going to be the future. But she brought us to her house so we could see what a computer was. And the takeaway my cousin said was, 30 students in your house, the liabilities. We can't do that. But Mrs. Cramer was there, and that is a moment that I think I will always remember, is just all of us in her house, as students, looking at these computers and being introduced to them because she cared enough to do that. But one thing I want, and this will largely be directed to, I think, the students that are sitting back there. Do you remember self-directed learning? Now, this was something Mrs. Cramer did where I think it was on Wednesdays. We'd fill out sheets, and there'd be like 80 different activities you could do. And there was blocks of program, and it wasn't learning per se, except it was the most magnificent learning. Because we would choose what we wanted to do, and then we would go into, it could be a writing workshop, it could be performing a play, writing a play. Someone always cooked. And we had most of 5th grade, the entire classroom smelled like a burnt cookie the whole year. Because no one knew how to cook, but we all tried. But it was another thing that at the time we just thought, hey, this is cool, this isn't school, but it was. It was so involved. It was us learning at the next level. And I've monopolized the mic a long time, so I'll close with this. Of all the things I can think of when I think of Mrs. Cramer and being in her classroom is that it was the first time a teacher ever really taught us to embrace who we were and go with that as opposed to trying to be what the teacher told us to do. We all had a value. We all had an intrinsic value. We all had talents. We all had stuff we excelled at. And she grabbed onto that and made us embrace it and not put it aside, even if it's a little weird. And it speaks very well of her that after all these years, the bulk of that 5th grade class is still in touch. It was a very, very special time, and I love you, Mrs. Cramer, and I'm glad that we've stayed in touch up to this very point, and you will always be on my mind. Thank you.
not going to talk for very long, but I just wanted to sort of stand here as a testament to that. Her education and her teaching really stood through all generations. I am Paul Jr. I am her youngest son's oldest grandson. So, and in every context of my life, when I think of learning or education, she had some sort of impact. I studied classical voice in college because of the interest that she instilled in me. My life took a completely different turn, frankly, when I tried out for the play in high school because of her interest in plays. And anytime I had a question or an interest, she would always try and help me find a book or take me to, you know, whatever local little museum we could go check out for that information. And I mean, her love of learning emanates through everybody that I know that has met her. And I just wanted to say that, so.
So, like I said before, Roxanne has always been a great fan of Simon and Garfunkel, so we're going to sing another song for you.
Are you going to Scarborough Fair? Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Remember me to one who lives there. She once was a true love of mine. Tell her to make me a cambric hill in a deep forest green. Parsley, sage, rosemary, and tossing of sparrow on snow-crested brow, without no seams, no needle, bedclothes, the child of the mountain. She'll be a true love, sleeps unaware of the clarion call. Tell her to find me an acre of hill in a sprinkling of leaves. These sage, rosemary, and washes the grave with silvery tears between the salt water and the sea strand. Polishes a gun, she'll be a true love of mine. Tell her to reap it with a sickle, blazing in scarlet rattan. Parsley, sage, rosemary, and generals order their soldiers to kill, and gather it all in a bundle of cause they've never forgotten. She'll be a true love of mine. Are you going to Scarborough Fair? Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. Remember me to one who lives there. She once was a true love of mine.
it's, I have so much to be thankful for my mother. And the more I go into it and remember and think, it's like how much I've been formed by her impulses and her encouragement. In many respects, I can start with, well, the whole education thing. I mean, she was a teacher, and she was always encouraging us brothers and to learn, and she made it fun. It was always this aspect of like she made us see how it was really fun to learn. And sometimes I remember once coming home from school feeling totally despondent over this research report that we had to write about the Bessemer steel converter. Oh my God, I was in 4th grade. I remember coming home crying. It's just like, Bessemer steel converter, and there's this picture of this thing. It's like, what, you know? I was totally devastated. She goes, you know, come on, it's, you know, and she was just giving me encouragement, and finally did a great thing out of it, turned it into a really nice thing. And, you know, I was really happy and proud about, wow, it actually turned out. Yeah. She wanted us to really explore and to not be fitting in these boundaries. This, you know, when there were several times that she had us on different occasions going to alternative schools where there was a much that the sky. I mean, the sky was the limit, basically. Incredible learning experiences, both when we went to Wilston Elementary, which was in Falls Church. They started something new called Upper Elementary, where they combined 5th and 6th grade, and there's so much new thinking going on there, and it was just like a glorious time. And then, of course, we went to junior high school. We went to the Hoffman Boston project in South Arlington, which was also a lot of new thinking and amazing experiences that we had in these schools. And my brother, he went to Woodlawn, also alternative. So she was very much encouraging to go beyond the set boundaries of what traditional education should look like. I also very clearly remember when I was younger still, we were living in Cambridge, Massachusetts at the time, and it was part of the big drive to get the man on the moon, you know, and the government was funneling huge amounts of money into science, developing science all over the country, science programs in all the schools, just science, 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 trying to really push for that. So part of that drive led to this little kits, science kits that you could send for. Once a week you get a little kit in the mail, a little experiment, growing seeds in vermiculite. I remember one was one of them, you know, with magnets, you know, and as little kids we were like, you know, 7, 8 years old. Wow, when's the next science project gonna come? You know, it's like, I remember it so clearly, those things, and that really instilled and interested me in science, together with, of course, Les, who is a story in itself with his chemicals and stuff in the basement. But anyway, yeah. So that was one thing I'm really, really thankful for. And she has instilled this playfulness in me, I think. I'm a teacher myself in Sweden. And it's just of, you know, being natural and not having this, you know, facade, but just really kind of encouraging and meeting the kids as individuals, as instead of, you know, that you are the kids, I'm the teacher, listen to me, this kind of stuff, you know. So that's one aspect. But the other thing, which has even been a greater thing for me still, is music. When I was 4 years old, she was encouraging me. I had a propensity to find harmonies to songs, and she really encouraged me with that. And we would oftentimes sit together and just sing simple songs with harmonies in rounds or other songs. And yeah, she's really encouraged me with the singing, and that has had an enormous impact in my life, because I became afterwards a choir director in Sweden, had like 6 different choirs at one point, and it really has followed me all my life. I've been writing many choral pieces and leading, you know, singing my own songs, and she's always been kind of like there in the background for me. I mean, somehow she was lifting me up. She bought me my first guitar, which I still use today when I'm playing all my performances and, you know, stuff. She got it when I was 15 years old, and it's still sounding great. So I really am thankful for the music. And one other thing I also wanted to mention, which felt very important for me, because when I was a teenager, I became very interested in spiritual matters, and Mom was not interested in spiritual matters. I got deeply involved in a yoga group, which had a lot of rules and regulations and all kinds of stuff. Looking back at it, I can see, wow, okay, I would not join that now. A little bit sect warning there, but I mean, there was definitely benefits to it. But anyway, the point was that she allowed me to do this, even though she felt she did not like it. She didn't like the idea that we had a guru who was, had the ultimate authority and these kinds of things. She really didn't like that. She allowed me to choose that anyway. She allowed me to go to the retreats, to go to the yoga classes, to follow my heart in this. I felt that it was really strong of her to do that, because a parent could easily just say, "You can't do it, kid, stay home," She did not do that. And I really, really honor her for that open-mindedness, that she could allow me to follow my own path. And she's always been very generous in many ways. And she's coming over to visit us a lot in Sweden. She's been very, very interested, as probably many of you know, with the OLLI program, and even before, history has been her big thing, She's been over to Britain and Hadrian's Wall and stuff, and she's always taken advantage to come and visit us in Sweden, and it's always been great to have her there. She's been a wonderful grandmother to our kids. The little one here is my boy, Liam. He's 6 years old. Anyway, I could go on and on, but just sharing those reminiscences, I'm really happy to have had her as my mother. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Erin Bacon, and I had no intention of speaking here today, despite how much I love her and how much I've been thinking of Dr. Cramer. This is going to be the first time I say Roxanne Cramer. But one of the reasons I felt like I needed to come up here is because I am part of the ripple effect that you guys have been talking about. I recently, before I learned of her passing, was trying to find her information to reach out to her, because I actually live in Cambridge, Mass. now. I am a professional cellist. When I was in 5th grade, I would leave her class once a week to go to strings and to, have my strings lessons. But in February, I started my own school of music. So not only do I teach now, and not only is it something that I'm extremely passionate about, and I'm thrilled to say that so far my school is doing really well. But it's funny because I don't remember music in the classroom. I remember ancient Mesopotamia and ancient Greece and learning the Greek alphabet, the uppercase and the lowercase, which I got into a fight with later with one of my high school teachers, because when she put it in Latin class on the board, the lowercase, I was like, oh, I've learned this before. And she's like, there's no way you learned the lowercase. And I was like, no, we didn't. She's like, no. She was just so rude and condescending. She's like, unless your teacher had an education in the classics, there's no way they would have known it. And I was like, well, she was one of the smartest people I've ever known, and she had a PhD, and she basically knew everything about Greece, the aqueducts, all of that. Yeah, we learned this, and I won't respond with her response because, she's just not worth it. It's not worth it. But, I was so mad at that teacher. She was just, how dare she insult Dr. Cramer. Dr. Cramer was amazing. We talked about, I remember it was one of those things, so my high school graduation was in 2007, so if that gives you kind of more context as to when I was in 5th grade with her. And I remember, it was such a big thing that we covered evolution in the classroom, and some parents were not so happy about that. But my parents, my father being a physicist, it was just such a wonderful thing to talk about science and history. And I remember those being some of the really great things that she was just so passionate about in the classroom. And so like I said, I'm part of the ripple effect. You can't imagine how many people's lives she's touched, because, you know, here I was, and to be frank, I was unaware of her situation, and just something inside me was like, you have to reach out, you have to find her, you have to tell her you're teaching. You, like, for some reason, this seems really important to share. And, you know, I'm sad that I never got to share that with her, but I'm also so grateful because I am sure that a huge part of that has to do with her. And I also want to put this out there. The other thing, as I remember, is I was very lucky. I went to Louise Archer for the GT, the Gifted and Talented program. And, you know, you always hear, like, oh, like, you're going to want this teacher next year, you're going to want this teacher next year. And Dr. Cramer was known as being the tough teacher, the difficult teacher. You'd spend a lot of time working, a lot of time studying, you know, expect to have homework. It's not going to be easy. And so, you know, there were those kids that always were like, oh, I hope I don't get Dr. Cramer. And I was one of those ones, I was like, I want this. Like, and I remember the day that I found out, I went running down the hallway and was just so excited. And because the kids ahead of me, like Michael Schoenfeld over there, the things you would always hear from them is, yes, it's going to be hard and it's going to be a lot of work, but it's going to be one of the best years of your life, and it's going to be so rewarding. And, you know, here I am, however many years later, and I can still tell you it was one of the most rewarding and incredible years of my life. And I just feel so fortunate to have had that opportunity. I remember, you know, reading Julius Caesar and having to study Aristophanes and, like, you know, ancient Mesopotamia, like all of that. And it's just will be memories I treasure for the rest of my life. So not having known that she was in Cambridge before, you know, it's kind of funny that here I am in Cambridge now, and that's where my school is, and that's where I will continue to teach for who knows how many years. But if I could ever be just like, you know, 100th of the quality of a teacher that she was, I would feel like I'd done something great with my life. So I'm so blessed to have known your mother.
I had the pleasure of knowing two Roxannes. I had not intended to speak here either. But I first met Roxanne, the first Roxanne, in 1984. And when you look at the photographs out in the hall and you see the professional Roxanne, well, that was the first Roxanne I met. Roxanne was always perfectly groomed, always classically dressed. Roxanne had an innate sense of dignity. Roxanne always looked to a higher purpose. She and I were soulmates because we were both very passionate about our teaching. And in the summer when the school was over and the kids had gone home, guess what we did? We were the ones who were volunteering to go in and write the curriculum because we wanted to make sure that the Gifted and Talented curriculum included philosophical themes, that it integrated music, that it integrated art, that it was not a textbook program, that it was student-driven. We agreed that the best discipline in the classroom was to make the learning so enticing that the students would be so involved in learning they didn't have time to get into trouble, and it worked very well for both of us. So for many, many years, Roxanne and I shared a lot of ideas. We both put on the Shakespearean plays at different center programs. We did the training. Eventually, I became an administrator for the program and made sure that I always got Roxanne in as much as possible to continue to work on keeping the curriculum demanding, self-actualizing curriculum. And then later, about 10 years ago, I got to meet the second Roxanne, and that's the Roxanne that would be wearing the white walking shoes and the khaki pants, the Roxanne that always had on the white sailor hat pulled down with the brim, the Roxanne that always had her Harvard lanyard, the Roxanne with her name tag because now she was at Ollie, and as was I. And I remember when I first joined Ollie and I saw Roxanne walking home, and I stopped and I said, "Do you want to ride?" And she said, "Oh, no, this is part of my exercise program." Roxanne and I then, of course, became friends on Facebook because that's what we do. And so that's how I got to know about the Cramer crazies and got to see the photographs of the children in Sweden and got to see little pictures onto your world through Facebook and our conversations. And she was so delighted to be within walking distance of Ollie because she said in Ollie, that's where she finally met her peer group. Ollie was her gifted and talented program, and I know that she felt very strongly and very passionately about all of you. So she was indeed quite a role model and an incredible person, and I was glad to call her friend.
Public speaking, yikes. I figure if Erin Bacon can do it, I ought to be able to give it a try. I would like to echo her sentiments as well as those of the Cramer crazies by adding an anecdote or two of my own. In the school year at Louise Archer Elementary School, 1997 to 1998, I don't think there was one faculty member that would have considered Michael Schenefeld a scholar by any means. But due to a hilarious clerical error, I found myself in the gifted and talented program in the 1998-1999 school year, the fifth grade class of Dr. Cramer. On day one of class, what I lacked for in intelligence, I made up for in confidence, and I volunteered to read a paragraph out loud in front of the classroom and came across the word Fatigue and pronounced it fatigue in front of the whole class, as you do when you're not a scholar. And I was just met with love and kindness and inspiration when I had that error that was rather embarrassing. The next week, we started history, and we learned about ancient Rome and the Roman Empire, and she asked a question I posed a question to the class, what modern day country where can we find Rome? What modern day country? And again, a theme in my life, what I lack for in intelligence, I make up for in confidence. And I rose my hand and answered Romania. And that answer was met again with love and kindness and encouragement. And then I'll fast forward to the end of that school year. I had to give a presentation on any subject in history, so I chose the very specific subject of World War II. No thesis, no nothing. I just went up there and was supposed to talk for 5 minutes on World War II. So I went up with notes, and half an hour later my presentation ended, just rambling about whatever I had read in the one book I chose to read, and it was met with love and kindness and encouragement. And fast forward a couple years later, I found myself carrying with me that love and kindness and encouragement, and after that year, I became an avid lover of reading and history and studied that in high school at James Madison High School, and then in college I studied Latin and I studied classical history. And now I call myself a professional actor, a member of the Screen Actors Guild and the Actors Equity Union. And I told a lot of friends this week that knew I was coming back to Virginia to pay my respects to the family and reminisce about Dr. Cramer. And I owe that to her. She's the teacher that made me that with her Reader's Theater. And to this day, whenever I get a new script, this summer I get to do Henry IV out in Los Angeles, the Shakespeare play. And as I'm going through all of my lines, trying to get off book, I listen to them with classical music in the background. And hardly a moment goes by where I don't think of her and thank her. And I actually got to, a couple years ago, have the conversation with her that I always dreamed of having. We met at Tequila Grande on 123. The company was excellent. The food was so-so. But I got to tell her everything I wanted to, which was truly a gift, that she was the teacher that made all the difference for me. So I'm happy to be here. Nice to meet the family. And hope to talk to some Cramer crazies over a little meal later. So nice to see you all. Thank you.
I'm Bill Kamens, and I know Roxanne through her youngest son, Paul. And I have not seen her for a long time, but I remember very clearly the times I spent over at their house. I recall the very first time I met Paul, and when I found out he was Dana's brother. I already knew Dana and knew he was a fascinating character. And when I realized Paul was related to Dana, I wanted to know more about him and became fast friends with him and eventually made it over to Paul's house. And it was just unlike any house I'd ever been over to before. I was not used to parents talking to you like you weren't an overgrown kid. I was not used to parents that talked to you like you were an adult, had expectations like you were an adult, asked you questions and expected answers like you were an adult, that conversed with you like you were an adult. And I was not used to parents that said, call me by my first name. And I was not used to a house like their house with experiments and whatever Les had going and wires, and to me it was like a think tank going on there. And I could tell you a variety of anecdotes, but I think the main thing that's worth saying, and it ties into what I've heard, the connection, the Cramer crazies and her sons and her grandchildren, that there's something that keeps going. And Paul's one of my best friends, but I always have a handful of best friends, but with Paul it's been like 40 years. He truly is one of the most fascinating people I've ever met, and that's a testament. That's a testament to your mother, that you're here, and that you're here, and that you all are here. And I'm grateful.
Hi, I'm James Golden. I'm Jody, who spoke earlier's son. Family friends of the Cramers since probably somewhere in the early mid 70s. My guy back there just stole the thunder because I was just sick of getting up and saying the same thing. We met Les and Roxanne. They were the first people that we called by their first name. It wasn't Mr. and Mrs. Cramer, and that was somewhat revolutionary for a little 8-9-year-old kid. And just positive memories all around there. I still drive up Carlin Springs Drive, and there's like a little maybe historical house on the side. You guys may know what it is, but I remember that house in the cul-de-sac, and just an awesome place. Had the the deck and the back up to the woods, and I still remember the funniest little stuff. I remember the little cushions downstairs. They had a nice, little setup, and maybe some of the pictures on the walls, and just the coolest stereos. The liquid light show that I think Les put together with the, little Jefferson, airplane psychedelic thing going on the walls, which was, just awesome. But I guess I was telling Dana before, and it's kind of funny because I saw Dana recorded a CD probably about 10 years ago, and I kind of look at, who is this guy? I kind of remember him, but I remember back probably 40 years ago, I played a guitar over at the house, and Dana gave me a little bit of encouragement. I can't remember exactly what the words were, but it was just sort of a positive, pass it along thing. And I still play today. I played, this morning before I came out here. But I guess I'm saying this to say this. That's a product of this woman here. And I don't really have that, pivotal moment to stand up and say, her kids are students back here, and I regret I wasn't able to, be taught by her, because I didn't have anything close to a teacher like that. I can't even think of a teacher I like, honestly. And you've got a whole row back here that, she influenced so positively. But like I say, I can't point to a pivotal moment, but there's a lot of warmth from this woman. She was just really great. Great smile, of course, that's physical, but you just felt a reality from her, and just, never talk down to you. You were never like a little, you don't know anything, like, vibe like you got from parents back in those days, or, friends of parents. But, yeah, she just, obviously left a really positive legacy, and, it's something I got to get busy doing too. I'm just, I think about it, and I say, wow, she touched a lot of lives, got great family, great grandchildren, obviously, all over the world, and yeah, just a great lady. And I regret I probably didn't talk to her for probably in the past year or so. My mother probably spoke to her, pretty close to every day, but I make the mistake of not keeping up with people, and you turn around and they're gone, because it's short. But yeah, thank you, Roxanne. You're really a great lady, and we're everybody's glad to have known you. Who's next? Thank you.
We need to move on to the lullaby soon, and if there's anyone else, I know there was a person who wanted to share something special that she had written. Thank you.
Class alumni, so. I'm one of the Cramer crazies, and I am not on Facebook. So I heard that Roxanne was ill a little late. Being a little late to the party, one of my alumni said, well, if you have something to say, I think you should maybe say it to her now. So I wrote her this letter. Unfortunately, it arrived just a little bit too late, but I would like to read it to her now. It says, Dear Mrs. C, I've thought about you a lot over the years, the impact that you've had on my life and that of so many others. And while I've thought about thanking you many times, it always seemed like I would never be able to say enough, never find the right words. To say I'm grateful feels inadequate. Know that you are loved, respected, and admired. Know that you made a difference. Know that having you as a teacher made that part of childhood really good. Know that you gave all of us a place to learn, grow, and to feel valued and important. You saw potential in each of us. Because you believed in us, we learned to believe in ourselves. Thank you so very much. With love, Lisa Marabelli, CC, class of 1982.
So that we can have some time to mix and mingle and socialize, what we'll do now is, unless somebody has a really urgent need to rush to the stage and grab the microphone.
I just want to say thank you guys for sharing what you have. It really means a lot to me, and it's great hearing it. I can't even tell you how much I love hearing it. Okay, that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul. We're going to sing that group lullaby, All Through the Light, derived from All Through the Night. And hopefully everyone has the lyrics. Let me know if you don't.
for you, bro. I have one here. Otherwise, we can just share this one. You're so far away. You have no? Yeah. Okay. Sleep, my child, and peace attend thee all through the light. Lovely colors will suffuse thee all through the light. Soft the drowsy hours are creeping, hill and vale in slumber sleeping. I my loving vigil keeping all through the light, while the moon her watch is keeping all through the light, while the weary world is sleeping all through the light. Through thy chariot gently stealing, visions of delight revealing, breathes a pure and holy feeling all through the light. Love, to thee my thoughts are turning all through the light. All for thee my heart is yearning all through the light. Though sad fight our lives may sever, parting will not last forever. There's a hope that leaves me never all through the night. There's a hope that leaves me never all through the night. Okay, that was it, I guess. Thank you again. Yeah. Yeah, it's not over yet. I mean, this part is, you can't leave. Lock the doors. Okay. Yeah. So please. There's food out there in the reception area, and as we say in Swedish, passa på. That means take advantage of the opportunity to meet each other and talk. Thank you.